Not sure I did. All right, time to start. All right, we're going to notice an introduction to you ugly. Yes, I know. Try. All right, in introduction to Hosea. Now, when we look at this, now, when I talk about chapter 1, we'll probably have some overlapping here, but chapters 1, 2, and 3 are very historical, but also set the stage for the rest of the book. And we need to understand when we look at chapters 1, 2, and 3, and we talk about those 3 chapters, that's it, like I said, sets the stage for the rest of it. Now, Hosea then means Jehovah saves or salvation. Jehovah saves or salvation. He is a gentleman of deep feelings, like Jeremiah. He is compared to John because of the stress of the love of God. He also, with the date, and I gave some of you a copy of this, and I need to send this to you, Trey, on my outline books of the outlines there. And if you'll look in chapter 1 and verse 1 of Hosea, it talks about, and this is how we can date the book. You find Uzzah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, in the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel. That would be, if you're studying some things, sometimes they'll refer to that as Jeroboam 2, because the first king of Israel was Jeroboam also. So this would be the second Jeroboam. Anyway, this is 2 Kings 15 through 17. And when we study this and we study Amos, which we will do, we'll notice that they are contemporaries. And Amos are contemporaries. And then also Isaiah and Micah. So we have, those are contemporaries. So when we look at the contemporaries, if we understand that Isaiah was 750 years before Christ, 750 BC, then that puts us then in a time frame where we understand that Amos will be in that same time. Now, when we study Joel's a little bit before Hosea then. So here's Hosea, Joel, and Amos. So time period's the same. All right. We're talking about then, and Hosea is going to talk about the Assyrian captivity. 3 kings we need to understand, and these are mentioned in our Bibles about this of Assyria, the kings of Assyria. Number 1 is Tiglath-Pileser. I love it too. Tiglath-Pileser. Tiglath-Pileser. S-E-R.
Okay.
And then there's Shalmaneser, the 4th. S-H-A-L-M-A-N-E-S-E-R, the 4th. Although he's not called the 4th in the Bible, we just, all right. And then there's Sargon, S-A-R-G-O-N, the 2nd. Now, I don't think I talked about this, but let me talk about Assyrian were very ruthless people. And so when they're going to come down to the land, and that's going to be, all right, now, Isaiah 750, the Assyrian captivity is 722 BC. So we're talking about what, 38 years?
When was the captivity?
722. Okay, that's one of those dates that ought to be immediately in your mind. 722. Also, then the 606, 536. Those are other dates that ought to come into your mind. 606 is when Judah went into captivity. Are you familiar with the division? Why they have Israel and Judah? Okay, we need to go back and we need to talk about that, because that sets up this situation that we're talking about here. We need to study the history. All right, you remember first king of the United Kingdom is Saul, then David, and then Solomon. Solomon then, each one of these ruled for 40 years, so they ruled for 120 years. Then when Solomon died, his son Rehoboam became ruler. All right, now the people came to Rehoboam and asked him to reduce the taxes. And he says, give me 3 days and let me talk to these folks and let me find out what my advisor. And you remember he talked to the young advisors and they told him one thing. He talked to the older advisors and they told him something else. Older ones told him to reduce it, they'll serve you forever. The young one says, nah, just say we're going to charge you more. So in the meantime, while he's doing this, God had sent a prophet to Jeroboam. And he told Jeroboam, I'm going to give you 10 tribes. 2 tribes are going to go with Rehoboam, but I'm going to give you 10 tribes. Rehoboam then, going back to that situation, Rehoboam took the counsel of the young men, talked very roughly to the people. He sent out somebody and they killed him from the northern tribes. And so that's when we see the division then between and they became known, the northern tribes, the 10 northern tribes became known as Israel, and the southern tribe became known as Judah. Now, this also can be called Ephraim sometimes.
What is?
The northern tribes can be called Ephraim. So there's this division and the reason of that division. So when we talk about 722, we're talking about then when the northern tribes went into Assyrian captivity. When we talk about 606, that's when Judah went into Babylonian captivity. That's talking about Daniel, those type of things then. So there are some dates that are very, ought to be just come in our minds. And when we talk about these things and understand these times. This book then, when we're talking about the date, and we talked about some times in there, is considered one of the oldest. I think Joel is considered older. So, but this is right there close to Hosea being one of the oldest of the minor prophets. And you understand what we're talking about by minor prophets and major prophets. Then it's just by the amount of material in there. That's all it's talking about. The conditions also of the time were very materialistic. They were very prosperous materialistically. Society was falling apart morally. Romans chapter 1, verses 18 through 32, as the first century was. Romans 1, 18 through 32. Outwardly, there was peace, prosperity, and plenty. All right, inwardly, there was ease, there was extravagance, and indulgence. Now, there are 7 steps to their downfall.
You
All
say their downfall.
Talking about Israel's.
Okay, Israel.
All right, number 1, a lack of knowledge. Hosea 4:6. That should be a memory verse. My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee from being a priest to me. Seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, I will also forget thy children. And that's why it's so important for us today when we're preaching and teaching 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 15, study to show thyself approved unto God. There's that also passage in Hebrews chapter 5, beginning with verse 14, for when for the time you ought to be teachers, you have need that one teach you again, which be the first principles of the oracles of God. So, we also see, and this is still under the lack of knowledge, that their understanding was taken away. Amos chapter 6, verses 1 through 6. All right, ready? Number 2, pride. 5 and verse 5. Chapter 5, verse 5. Through prosperity and affluence, they think they don't need God. That's what happens to people. Number 3, you ready? Okay. Number 3, instability, spiritual weakness, fickleness. Instability, spiritual weakness, and fickleness. Chapter 6, verse 4, 13:3. Number 4, worldliness. Chapter 7, 8 through 16. Number 5, corruption, rottenness, decay. Politically, domestically, religiously, and morally. 4, 6, and 8 through 9. That's all in chapter 4. Chapter 4, 4. Then chapter 4, verse 6, and then 8 through 9. All right. Number 6, backsliding. 11:7. Number 7, idolatry. 13:2. All right, Hosea paints a vivid picture of sin, whoredom, idolatry. And this is going to be in his own life. Not his, but his wife. All right, 3 lessons. Let me make sure that, 3 lessons that we learned. Number one, any departure from God is spiritual adultery. Any departure from God is spiritual adultery. Number two, thinking, supporting of self, support self, in our work, in our worship. Yeah, I know what I'm trying to do here and how to word this. When we think we do it all in our work, in our worship, when we think we're doing it, it's from us, when really it's from God that supports us, okay? In our work and in our worship. It's not us that's doing it. It's really God giving us this ability. Okay, does that make sense? And see, they had the idea that it was just them by themselves. They had forgotten God. And when God really was behind it, he's behind all our blessings. It's not we ourselves, it's God. Now, how did you write that down?
Sort of thinking when we are self-supporting in our work and worship, it's really God.
Yes, okay, that's good. Has Hosea paid a price to get his wife back?
This number 3?
Yes. Number 3.
Okay, so
As Hosea paid a price to get his wife back? Because of his love for her? God has paid a price for us to come back. Uh-oh, your pen died. You need a pen?
God has paid a price for us to come back.
Uh-huh. Let me give you some passages here. Isaiah 59, 1 and 2. Our sins and our iniquities have separated from God. God commended his love. Romans chapter 5, verses 6 through 9. God commended his love towards us, and while we were sinners, Christ died for us. For by grace are you saved. Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 8. 1 Timothy 2, 4. Who would have all men to be saved and come to a knowledge of the truth. He wants all men to be saved. Not all men will. 2 Peter chapter 3 and verse 9, the Lord is not slack concerning his promises. Some men count slackness, but his long suffering to us, we're not willing that any should perish, but all should come to repentance. God loves us and wants us back when we go astray. Return is used 17 times in this book. All right. Chapter 1. Now, like I said, in chapters 1, 2, and 3, we're going to go kind of slow because this sets the stage for what's going to take place, and we've got to understand and to do this. All right, so in chapter 1, we're setting the time when Hosea was writing, when he was prophesying of these things. Most of this I've already gone through when I did the introduction. Let's see. 1 Kings chapter 11 and through 13 would be to understand, when we talk about Solomon there, that's that story. So you need to read that to get a better understanding of what took place there. Let's see. Oh, and Rehoboam, let me state this too. Rehoboam No, Jeroboam. Jeroboam is evil. And all those kings, I think there's maybe 18 or 19 of those kings that are listed, are all evil. None of them. Now, in Judah, some of them are evil and some of them are good. Jeroboam is bad. Okay. He gets Israel to sin, and it uses that phrase that he sinned like Jeroboam. I forgot exactly how that word, but anyway, it uses that phrase. There's a reiterating phrase throughout those things. All right. Israel did have peace and prosperity, but the nation had become idle, and were now trusting in earthly wealth. When we'll get into some of that also with Amos. Woe unto them that are at ease in Zion. Some of those things that he's talking about there. The times were one of religious and political corruption. The priests weren't doing their job. So it's a time of religious and political corruption, and also they were morally bankrupt. The land was full of tyranny, idleness, and the abundance of money. Idleness and the abundance of money. They had abandoned God and the law of Moses. Chapter 4, verse 1, 6, and verse 6. Chapter 4, verse 1 and verse 6, and then 6, 6. Hear the word of the Lord, ye children of Israel, for the Lord hath controversy in the inhabitants of the land, because there is no truth, no mercy, nor knowledge of God in the land. And then in verse 6, he said, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. And then in chapter 6 and verse 6, he says, for I desired mercy and not sacrifice, and knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. Here's the corruption. All right, Hosea's personal life would become a parable to Israel. He married, and it's interesting when you study this, if you read the commentary, whether she is a prostitute or she is of the children of the prostitute, but later she becomes a prostitute. So we'll just say he married a prostitute and had 3 children by her. Her name is Gomer.
I have a note here.
Oh.
Verse 6 called child. Low, root, Amos.
Yes.
And that means it's not Hosea's child.
Didn't find that.
Okay. Just wanted to tell you.
But we're going to talk about their names because their names mean something.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. And I think these children were his.
Okay.
I don't think she became a prostitute until after, or she became unfaithful to him. She may have been a prostitute before, but
She was unfaithful even
after she had these 3 children. She just leaves them, abandons them. We'll get into the Gomer. That's her name. Gomer. Like Gomer Pyle. Josiah. She is unfaithful. You can say that. She would one day depart and desert Hosea. Hosea had to buy her back. All right? Because God told him to, but still, he had to buy her back. Let's see. He loved Gomer enough to redeem her and forgive her. Now, and the way I want you to understand redeem here and how God loved us and bought us then and paid the price for us and forgave us. I think there's some important lessons that we can learn in this too. And this is also the picture of how God felt towards Israel. And this is a key point. You might see this again if you're taking this for credit. This relationship between Hosea and Gomer provides the background and key to the whole book. Spiritually speaking, Israel was an immoral harlot. The kings of Israel, now all of them, not just the ones that we're talking about here, but all of them lived in defiance of God. All right, the leadership of the kings, we're talking about Israel now, these men who were not of David's lineage, but these kings of Israel, took God's people to a level of the nations surrounding them. They became, in other words, like the nations round about them. 1 Samuel chapter 8, we want to be like the nations round about them. All right, verses 2 and 3. It says, go take thee a wife of whoredoms and the children of whoredoms. So, I think she was a child of whoredom, but she also was a whore herself. Some would disagree with that, but that's okay. And I think from that passage, you could see that she, and of the children of whoredoms. God told her to marry this woman. And she was from the children of Israel. All right, Gomer would cause Hosea great agony and grief. Shame and embarrassment. But he continued to love her and to seek her highest good. And this is a picture of how God felt towards Israel. Now, when I said a parable, understand something. Now, God's teaching Israel through these actual events. So he's teaching them many great lessons through the life and experiences of Hosea. And I think it makes Hosea a different kind of preacher because he's going through these things. One of the lessons was God's judgment and his chastisement in dealing with the wickedness of the people. The judgments of God and his chastisement. In dealing with the wickedness of the people. Now, these people were supposed to love and serve God. Go back to the book of Exodus, and even before then, but in Exodus chapter 20, thou shalt love the Lord thy God. Well, that's Deuteronomy. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind. So this is what they were taught to do, and they should have been doing it, but they weren't doing it. Even though there was that separation, they should have come back to. And there is a remnant that's going to be saved, and we'll notice that. In the book of Luke, we'll notice that there is a remnant. These people don't go, they go into captivity, but there's some that come down, and through the years, they keep their lineage known. And that's important to understand. All right. Hosea also revealed that the Assyrian nation would rise up and punish Israel for their sins. God used other nations to punish his people. He's using the Assyrians to punish Israel. He's going to use the Babylonians to punish Judah. And I want to emphasize this again, the Assyrians. If you could just know how ruthless they were.
What two tribes were Judah?
Huh?
What two tribes were Judah?
Yes, Judah and Benjamin. Well, you understand that Simeon was involved. They were absorbed into Judah, I think it was. When these people came in, they had no mercy. Okay, they would rip the babies. If a woman was pregnant, they'd just rip the baby right out of the woman. Yes, it's just atrocious what they would do. So this has not happened yet, but Hosea is trying to warn them. God always warned his people about impending doom. And this is then what Hosea's job is and he's doing this through this illustration of his wife and trying to get these people to understand. If you read Isaiah and Jeremiah, you'll see that God used object lessons many times to get them to trying to teach them what they're trying to do. Hosea wrote from 40 to 70 years. And it was going to be during the last period, the last kings of Israel. And God promised that a remnant shall return. When we look, and I'll show you this is important. Because when you study premillennialism will tell you that they were wiped out, never to be heard from again. But in Luke chapter 2 and verse 36, and there was one Anna, a prophetess of the daughter of Penuel of the tribe of Asher. So not only, so she could trace her lineage then through Asher. Anna. Okay. She could trace her lineage then through Asher all the way back to Adam. And that's important to understand because, like I said, some of the people will say that they were just wiped out, never to be heard from again, but that's not so.
Israel.
Yes, all 10 tribes.
But not Judah.
No.
Judah's traced in Matthew 1.
Yes. But
Jesus.
Yes. Now, you got to understand when I'm talking about Israel,
Talking about the 10
tribes.
Israel.
Yes. See, now when I talk about Israel, I'm talking about those 10 tribes. Okay? The 10 northern tribes. I'm not talking about Israel.
All of Simeon absorbed into Benjamin.
Well, when I say absorbed, and understand that land, the promise, when you go back and study the inheritance that was given, okay, it is said that his inheritance would be part of Judah. And thus yes, and the landmarks. Remember in Proverbs, it talks about remove not the ancient landmarks. They were not as distinct between Simeon and Judah. So they were the land just kind of absorbed, and there was not that distinction there between. And that's why they're still referred to as just 2 tribes. Right? Am I making sense here? Okay. The people of Hosea's day paid little or no attention to the message, to his message. They mocked him, saying that God was vengeful. And the people rejected his message. When you study this, I'm going to tell you something. You say, man, this is just right out of today's, you look at the church even. Some of this is happening. Not everybody in the church. Some in the church are doing it. Okay. And people rejected the message.
Yeah.
And Hosea then message became full of mercy and love. When you get past then chapter 3, you're going to see his message, and I think he understands from the aspect of who God is. So he's changing that message. He may not have understood when he started to marry Gomer for the first time. He may not have understood everything, but after this process, and they have these 3 children, and she goes away, and she's living then with these lovers, and then when he finds her again, she is in sackcloth. She's really in just really terrible clothing. Okay, yes. And her lover can no longer support her. And he's going to sell her on the auction block as a slave. And God tells him to go buy her. And I think he understands how God feels then about his people. And here is the people of Israel. Yes, he did. All right. They had 3 children. 2 boys and 1 girl. All right, let's talk about these children now for a little bit. Verses 4 and 5, the first one was named Jezreel. That means castaway. Okay. Now notice also, and I will avenge the blood of Jezreel upon the house of Jehu. So, here's some other things that are going to take place. Jehu was a wild chariot driver, and you have Ahab and Jezebel. Okay, and then some things going to take the things that are taking place there. 2 Kings chapter 9, 30. You need to read that section through there to find out how Jehu then was to do those things, taking vengeance and destroying this house. Yes. Yes. Then also we find a daughter, and her name is Lo-Ruhamah, which means no mercy. Now, the reason we need to notice that name because he's going to nickname them, and it's going to change things.
What means no mercy?
No mercy. No mas. No more. All right, verses 6 and 7, there is the 3rd child. Well, there's the 2nd child. Yeah. All right, verse 8 then. She weaned, and she conceived and bare a son, and this son's name was Lo-Ammi. L-O-A-M-M-I. Lo-Ammi. Verse 9 too, where he names it. Verse 8, she becomes pregnant. Verse 9, God names this child.
And then she weaned that girl.
Yes.
That's the same name.
Huh?
That's the same name. She weaned Lo-Ruhamah.
Yes, and that's the girl's name. And then note verse 9. All right, verse 8, she became pregnant then. And then verse 9, he had the third child, the 2nd son, and his name then is Lo-Ammi. Am I? Okay. And his name means not my people. And you see that L-O? All right, that's significant. on the last two. Yes. So Israel was not God's people anymore. Now, these names of these children were assigned to Israel. All right. And if we look at chapter 2 and verse 23, and I will sow her and unto in the earth, and I will have mercy upon her that I have obtained mercy. And I will say to them which were not my people, thou art my people. They shall say, thou art my God. So here is them coming back. The grace and that understand the mercy of God. Okay. Chapter 2. All right, Hosea's life is a living canvas. Gomer will now turn to whoredom and the shame and the heartache that was caused by Hosea when the people began to talk about the infidelity of his wife. Verses 1 through 4. Now notice what he says. Look at verse 1. Say ye unto your brethren, and notice the LO is missing from these two names. Okay? So that changes the whole idea between now they are from not my people to they are my people. To there is no mercy to mercy. So their names are shortened. Okay, so it means mercy. The girl was named No Mercy, but now she's named Mercy. And then the son, the last son, is my people. There may have been, as a remnant, maybe a remnant listening to Hosea. You know, when we talk about judges, in the book of Judges, it says that there was no man did that which was, or every man did that which is right in his own eyes. But when you come to Ruth, you find that there were a remnant of keeping God's word. And you'll find the same thing here. There was a remnant keeping God's word. I think that's true. This remnant then was to contend with the rest of Israel who are about to be divorced by God. This remnant was to contend with the rest of Israel who was about to be divorced by God. All right, verses 5 through 7. And you're supposed to be reading this book, I think, through twice, right? All right. Gomer, like Israel, had left her children uncared for, was wasting her time with lovers, idols. See, Israel had left God and spending all her time with the idols. Gomer had left her children and spending all the time with her lovers. Gomer would find no real satisfaction in her wickedness and sinful ways. Hebrews 11, 24 and 25. That's when Moses refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather. 11, 24, 25. Moses refused to be son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer the affliction with the people than to enjoy the pleasures of sin, which are but for a season. Gomer was playing the harlot, was going from man to man. She finally fell into the arms of a man who was unable to pay for her food and for clothing. All right, verses 8 through 13. At the beginning, Gomer was with men who could give her fine clothing. But she got deeper into her whoredom, and her dresses became filthy rags. All right, all this came to the ears of Hosea. He still loved her. And this caused him to seek her. And this is that portrait then of the love that God had for Israel. Israel did not remember the source of her prosperity and blessings. Was about to lose everything. (14 through 23). How long the unfaithfulness of Gomer lasted is unknown. Gomer is about to be sold on the auction block in the marketplace. Her current lover was tired of her. She was to be sold as a slave. Hosea prays to God for guidance. And God says, go buy her back and love her as he did before. All right. Any questions about this so far? Can you hear me? I can hear you too.
Oh, you can?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay.
I heard all the noise you were making.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. So what we'll do, we'll take up here. Did you get the syllabus?
Oh, I did not.
I sent it again to you this afternoon, and it did not come back. It has not bounced back to me.
I did not receive it.
All right. Are you going to be at services tomorrow night?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'll give it to you then. I'll give you also one of these charts that I made out on the time things that I made reference to tonight. It'll help you out with some of that stuff. Okay. Now,
Okay.
Next week will be our last week for the year. Okay, we'll have 2 weeks off, and then we'll start in. Did you get to watch last week's class?
Part of it.
Okay.
I didn't finish it.
All right. Make sure you get that set of notes to me. I just want to make sure you got them, and then this week's too. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I'm sorry. I have tried to get that syllabus to you. and it has not bounced back. So I don't know what's going on there. All right, appreciate it. Yeah, somebody's getting it. Judy says. We'll see you tomorrow night.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Stop.